As we enter into this quiet stillness of the present moment, we awaken to everything around us, without and within, as if for the first time, seeing with new eyes, with an open heart, resting in peace, flowing with joy, in the loving radiance of the beloved, seeing as if from our heart, with eternal eyes.
Let us join together in what some call prayer, some call reflection, whatever you call it. Let us center ourselves. Loving Spirit, our world is being blown apart by violence. The reports of many mass killings this month assault us weekly, and we saw our latest example of murder in graphic detail this week. May Tyre Nichols rest in peace, and our hearts are with his family and all of your children of color of all ages who saw that video and thought, that could happen to me. Help us as a nation and each of us individually to change this cycle of violence. Let us open ourselves together to your spirit of love. We look for you in our lives so we can spread you to each other. For what we cannot find, or for we cannot give what we don't have. So help us to tune into you. May we not be distracted by busyness. Help us slow down and show us what is important. If we are challenged by illness and pain, help us to feel your comfort. If we are overwhelmed by grief, help us to see your face. If we are discouraged by adversity, help us to feel the hope you offer. We might be tired by all the challenges we see. Help to hold on. Maybe we're furious about something. Help us to separate the emotion from the situation, to analyze it, find out what it's teaching us, and what our next steps can be. And maybe we feel nothing. Ground us with your presence. Let peace begin in our own hearts and spread like ripples in a pond to our world. Amen. I'm adding something. Within our congregation, we remember Lynn King's nephew, who died suddenly this week. He was a very loving and charming young man and will be dearly missed. Be with all those who are missing him, and be with all of the individual needs that we have. Again, amen.
morning. Today we have two scriptures. The first is from 1 John chapter 2. Do not love this passing world or anything that is in the world. The love of God is not in anyone who loves this world, for anything that this world has to offer, the cravings of the flesh, the cravings of the eye, the boastful pride of life, could never come from God, but only from this world. And this world, with its cravings, is not passing away. Is passing away. But anyone who does the will of God will not pass away. The second scripture is from the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao itself. The name that can be given is not the name itself. The unnameable is the source of the universe. The nameable is the originator of all things, the 10,000 things. Therefore, oftentimes without intention, I see the wonder of Tao. Oftentimes with intention, I see its manifestations. Its wonder and its manifestations are one and the same. Since they're emergent, they have been called by different names. Their identity is called the mystery. From mystery to further mystery, the entry of all wonders. Ancient words from various traditions for our consideration.
So is this microphone on? Seems like it, but I'm gonna carry this just in case. We had an adventure in the first service with the microphone, so somebody stepped on their record thing. I won't tell you who. Or how many times that happens, like in a given year or so. I'm not gonna preach today about what happened in Memphis. I'll do that next week. I want to give it a little time to settle and make sure I'm understanding the particulars of that. But I think it might be a good month just to think about all the causes that are happening in our world and how they affect, why Christians should be concerned. To make the link between the roots of our faith and the needs of the world. So I think that's the way we're going to go next month. But today we're finishing for now the series on the emotions. First service I didn't cough, I don't think at all. So hopefully that'll be the last. The passage that we read is kind of disturbing, very disturbing. That idea that we should hate the world and love God has done a lot of mischief in the world, and a lot of people who love God but don't really like Him very much, don't care about nature. I think they're missing what Jesus is talking about here. Although it's important to remember that this is written way after Jesus is gone. So this is John using Jesus to make a point, right? It's poetry, it's cosmic poetry, and you see examples of it around the world. We'll try to understand that in a second. In this series, what I've tried to stay away from is the idea that I can stand up here and do therapy, right? As we talk about each of these emotions that are so important, so essential to us, but can be so problematic, I understand that you may have gone through things this week that are beyond what I can imagine. And so in each case, I'm not talking psychologically. What I learned really early in the ministry is the most helpful thing I can do, even in counseling, is to see our problems as a stage through which we can understand a bigger view of life. So when life isn't working, when it's broken down, instead of just seeing that as a problem to fix, to use that as an opportunity to explore a new chapter in life that's bigger, deeper, and that kind of thing. Now, certainly, desire is essential. You wouldn't care about anything if you didn't have desire. So what we're not going to be saying today is that desire is bad. What we are going to be saying is that, like every other emotion, desire changes how we perceive the world. So when Buddha's teaching, when Jesus is teaching, I think what they're trying to do is help us see how we're seeing. Instead of just thinking that we're perceiving the world directly, through parables and different riddles and this kind of thing, to help us step back and realize how our emotions enrich the world and distort the world, our experiences. And it's kind of both and. In Hinduism, ran across very early in life the idea that fear and desire are two sides of one coin. And this has really been true for me in my life. I think it's more generally true, but again, you don't want to ever just take a preacher's word for granted. This may not work for you in the same way that it's worked for me. If so, I'll miss you in heaven. That's just kidding, just kidding. But I wouldn't get up and preach if I didn't know that you're going to take what's helpful and leave the rest behind. Choose your wisdom every time. What I'm asking you is to put this in the back burner and think about it. And that's all I'm asking ever. But that idea that what makes you afraid and what you desire are in some kind of relationship with each other. And the more we desire, the more fear just kind of slips in as a shadow to that. Again, think about it. Last week we looked at horror movies to understand how fear can be manipulated. Today we're going to look at advertising to see how desire can be manipulated. And if it's true that fear and desire are two sides of one coin, then some of the dynamics are going to look the same. So last week where we said that when you're afraid of another, you don't really perceive them directly. It's hard to look directly at them. I was very good as a kid at figuring out how to scare my brothers. I'd build little mannequins, and they'd come in, late evening, and it had to be out of the corner of the eye, right? If you see it, it's not going to scare you. But if it's out of the corner of your eye, you glance back saying, there can't be something there, really. That's my imagination. And there's a mannequin there, but by that time you're afraid. And so your brain finishes the rest of it where it looks like a real person. Try it, it's great. Just don't know when my brothers don't love me more. No, we did that to each other. Fear makes it hard to really look at something. So, and it's that fear, that inability to really look at what's there that can introduce horror into bad situations and bad time. In class today, someone's talking about cancer. You hear that C word, terrifying, but very often the experience of it is there's not a monster there. It's not pleasant, it's not what you want, it's not what you would choose. And sometimes it is monstrous. But a lot of the times it's just life, but you're taking medicine and you're living with the cancer, not dying by it. Like we're not going to die of something anyway. So first thing is where in fear we see a monster. In desire, a lot of times we see a mirage, a projection on another person or an event. The second is whereas in fear, there's kind of a ticking time bomb and you're really afraid of it. In desire, there's the same urgency, same ticking clock that if you don't jump into this thing, you're going to lose out, which is sometimes true and sometimes not true. Then the last one is just as fear gives you kind of tunnel vision, these long hallways. You look at The Shining, the picture of the little boy on the tricycle looking down the hallway and how scary that is. Advertising also knows how to give us tunnel vision. So we're going to kind of look at this thing, and I'll be speaking up here, but the important thing is that you look at your own life, you feel your own life, and decide whether this works. It's helpful for you. That passage that we read, on the surface of things I find very troubling. Do not love this passing world or anything that is in the world. The love of God is not in anyone who loves this world, for in this world has to offer the cravings of the flesh. It goes on like that. I think what Jesus is talking about, or John is having Jesus talk about, is when desire becomes too strong, it's also very hard to see what's there. And the example of that is when you first fall in love, one example of that, and you don't see the other person at all. You had a little romantic thing going in your brain, and this person comes along that's looking just perfect for that. And you don't really care what they want. You know what I'm saying? You just want them as an object in your life. Desire can turn subjects into objects. And one of the big lessons or punishments in life is, can you see the other person and not what you were looking for? Not what you want, but what is there. Marriages at work can do that. Right? At some point you realize, okay, this is not Prince Charming. This is not Cinderella. It's a real person. And this person doesn't fit in my drama. I mean, I had already lined up this whole kind of series of things, and they don't want to do it. Nor should they. So the first image we're going to look at today is in advertising. That idea that if you buy a certain product, you're going to have a quality of life that really has nothing to do with the product itself. Right? This is the most interesting man in the world, supposedly. And the way you can be interesting is to drink Tecate. And there are cigarettes that can make you exciting. You know the routine, like lots and lots of products that are supposed to give you qualities of life that's not there in the actual product that's there. Not putting down Tecate. I mean, Dos Equis, that's right.
Same thing.
Lawsuit. No, Tecate has a lime. So that's really different. That was the smartest thing anybody ever thought of, is having a brand that you put a lime in it. Like you couldn't put a lime in any beer in the whole world. But somebody thought of that. But you look at that and think of the times when you thought, if I can just get this person to love me, then I'll be worth something. Or if I can just get that job, if I can make that accomplishment, then my unhappiness is over for all time. That's the same kind of illusion. In Taoism, the line that was quoted, there's a translation I like better that says, if I look at the world with desire, I see the 10,000 things. When I look without desire, I see the one. I see the Tao. I believe that's what Jesus is saying with a different kind of symbol system. I think when you see that idea, in Greek it says the Father. We translate the Heavenly Parent. What it means is the source of our being. It seems to me that it's a symbol pointing to whatever it is we come out of. And you see this all over the world. So I think when Jesus is talking about the world and rejecting the world, hating the world, the word that's used there is cosmos, which can mean the world of nature, but that's not the way John is using it, I don't think. He's using cosmos also is a word we use for cosmetics, which means the appearance of things. So when we look at the world just through our politics, when we look at the world through our business, when we look at the world through what we want, it may be harder to see what's actually there. Have you ever had somebody who thought they loved you and they didn't know who you were? They didn't have the slightest idea. They wanted you as an object, but they didn't know you as a subject. That's not love. right? I mean, it feels like love, and you get disappointed and you think love has broken your heart. But the truth is you weren't ready yet. There's a wonderful quote. When we're not seeing life directly, then we start needing magical stories to put on top of it, magical beings, something to give it vitality, life, excitement. But we don't really need that if we see people for what they are, animals for what they are, plants for what they are, nature for what it is. You can't really do better than that. Right? That's the miracle. That's the miracle. Listen to this. Is Walt Whitman. He said, I know nothing but miracles. To me, every hour of the light and dark is a miracle. Every cubic inch of space is a miracle. So when we stop looking at the projection we make on the world, thinking that everything is inadequate, when we perceive the beings in our world as burning bushes, as revelations of the ground of being, as children of the parent, heavenly parent. Remember, it's a metaphor. Then we realize that we're not impoverished, that the miracle is all around us. So I think the first way that desire gets manipulated is that we're not able to see the other. We only see our own projection, and we feel totally alone. The second thing that advertising does is make us think that if we don't make that purchase, if we don't make that leap, we'll never get that moment back again. It's so important to realize that the other people in our lives have their own story that has nothing to do with us. Right? When I don't care about your story, when I don't care how you're unfolding over time, when I just want what I want right now, I'm not loving you organically. I'm not loving you as a seed that needs to blossom. So to let you have your own story, to let you have your own tempo, is a part of love that a lot of times we're not taught. So when desire gives us these kind of thirsty eyes, talks about the desires of the eyes, the desires of the flesh, this kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with desire, but to realize how we can get stuck. How we can get stuck in it. In Jewish and Christian literature, there's a phrase, waiting on God. I try not to get that religious. But the truth behind that is, if we can trust life and the tempo and not feel like things have to happen when we want them to, there's a whole lot more happiness in the world than when we think that life has to happen on our schedule and other people have to love us in the way and on the tempo that we desire. Someone once said the two worst things that can happen to a human being is, first of all, to not get what you want in life. And the second thing is to get what you want in life. When we can let life unfold, there's a kind of gentle happiness that isn't there when we just try to manufacture. As I've tried to think on the happiest times when I was a kid, the place my mind goes to is sitting on Christmas Day. All the I think I need to get a megaphone. As I've thought back on my life, and your experience may be different, and I think about the happiest moments of my life, it's surrounded by my family, Christmas tree over here, sitting with a lap full of presents, but I haven't opened up any of them yet. And I'm just sitting there buzzing. Now, what do you think that means? When, in some ways, just being alive and having expectation, living in a kind of desire that doesn't require a certain outcome, can be vital and alive in a way that nothing else is. Also, in my experience, when I see a flower, a beautiful flower in the field, if I don't pick it, if I just appreciate it for what it is and where it is, there is an exquisiteness to it that isn't there if I pick it and put it in a pot. Right? I'm honoring its being as other than myself, and also as something that has to grow and blossom. Another quote that I really like. Our true home is in the present moment. To live in the present moment is a miracle. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment, to appreciate the peace and beauty that are available now. In case you don't recognize that, Thich Nhat Hanh. So the first idea is being able to see others not as we want them to be, but as they are. If we can't do that, we feel completely alone. Then the second is to let life blossom, let it grow at its own pace, and to be okay with that. And the third, when we looked at horror movies, we talked about like the tunnel vision, the narrowness. This probably isn't the best picture I could have done. That might work better for the second point. But have you ever been in a store and the manager was smart enough to scramble up what's on sale on a table so that you think, if I don't grab this right now, I'm going to lose it. Right? And you focus on that thing so much that you kind of lose balance. Again, it's that idea. If only I can get that one thing. If I get that job, I'll be happy the rest of my life. If I get in a relationship with that person, then I'll stop complaining. I'll stop whining if I just get that. But that's not really human nature, is it? As soon as we have something, there's a part of us that starts looking for something else. Right? As soon as there's something constant in our lives, there's a part of our brain that moves it to the background. And it takes great spiritual discipline to keep seeing each moment, each person as this fresh kind of revelation. I remember one time I was visiting a family and they had a baby in a crib and they were like spoiling this kid rotten, which is fine. But so there's the crib was filled with toys, and one of the toys fell out. And I was struck by the image of this kid crying for the missing toy, surrounded by toys, up to its chin in toys, but it was the one it didn't have. That was the only one it could see. I thought, okay, this kid hadn't been to school yet, so this is probably in our wiring. Right? There's something about human consciousness, a kind of glitch, that can't appreciate what we have if there's something missing. I think the way to get beyond that is to love everything as an interconnected whole. When Jesus uses the image of the parent, and this is John putting these words in his mouth. The Jesus of the Sermon on the Mount didn't talk like this. But John is weaving together paganism and this kind of mystic Christianity, mystic Judaism, actually, and is using cosmic poetry. When it talks about the parent and saying, love the world and love the parent, what it's saying is, if you get too attached to the manifestations of life, you can lose the source of life. You lose the fountain out of which everything is coming. And vice versa. We need both. We need to be able to go to that source, love the source, and then recognize the source in every being that we meet. That's kind of the trick. One last quote. This will be it. Remember when we did this series on Vincent van Gogh, where he said the way to love God is to love many things? I think there's huge truth in that. That when we're sad, when we're lonely, when we're lost, when there's something that we want and we've got tunnel vision, to just look at other forms of beauty around us, to open up that tunnel vision. This is how Dostoevsky put it. Love all creation, the whole of it and every grain of sand. Love every leaf, every ray of God's light. Love the animals, love the plants, love everything. If you love everything, you will perceive the divine mystery in things. So, when Jesus says, love God, be careful with the world, I think it's warning us about the nature of desire. It's a two-headed coin. And if we don't stay in touch with both sides of the coin, we can get in trouble. We love things, but we love them in time. They're not our possessions. They do not belong to us. So the first thing is to realize that desire turns into love when we see past what we want from other people and see that mystery that's completely other. That we can't get anything out of it. We can't use it for anything. And yet it's the only thing that rescues us from solitude. And then the second thing is to realize that we have to love organically. We have to love as beings blossom. It's called waiting on God. That sounds really religious, but letting life be. Trusting life, because you can't get the handle anyway, right? There's no steering wheel. So to trust it, we can either fight against reality and break our hands and teeth, or we can go with it. And the last thing is to not let what we want rob us of living in the whole, to love each other ecologically. The insects are related to the plants, they're related to the animals, and it all is one whole. We can let others be expressions of that whole, that we can love in a way that lets them be a part of the whole. I'm going to read our passage one last time, and if it doesn't make any sense, I failed. But the microphone didn't work. That's a joke. We're having enough visitors now, we're having to explain every 4 minutes. Okay, no, I wasn't serious. Do not love this passing world or anything that is in this world. Of course you love the things in the world, but you don't love them as ultimate. The love of God is not in anyone who loves this world. That's saying you can lose the fountain of life. You can lose the source of life by getting lost in the manifestations that are called the world. For anything this world has to offer, the cravings of the flesh, the cravings of the eye, the boastful pride of life, could never come from God. They come from God, but they don't limit that. They come from the world. And this world with its cravings is passing away. But anyone who does the will of God, who just to love, will not pass away. Well, that's the best I can do with this passage. So we're going to take a moment now for you to think how you would have preached these words.